And this time around, I have with me a guest doctor, and I know we were kind of joking off air, mentioning your mom and your kids, and how your mom were, kids were calling you Doctor Mom at one point. So this is quite the ramp up to the introduction. Dr. Sukaina from Smile Canada, and the focus of today's live stream is supporting underserved families, and we'll go into depth into what that exactly means. So, Sukaina, welcome to the program.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So let's do a deep dive
Okay.
into what this topic represents. We were again discussing off air how Smile Canada was here at Masjid Dar Liman a year ago, almost to this date. In the summer, and we had like a little reptile zoo. We had, so many families come out of all shapes and sizes and backgrounds, but there was a common bond. The common bond being children within our own community, within the Muslim community, to be very specific, who have disabilities.
Yes.
So please tell us more about that.
So we say, I chose this topic, underserved, because these families, they exist within our spaces.
100%.
And we say underserved because they're not getting the services and supports they require. But also we're highlighting that term because it's a myth that they're getting everything. Oftentimes when I speak to community leaders, when I speak to just people in our community about Smile and the need for Smile and the need for us to have services and supports, oftentimes people respond by saying, but doesn't the government support them?
Oh, okay.
But why do you have a specific funding program? Like, don't they get everything paid for? Why do you have a therapy program? Don't they get that? And the short answer is no, they don't.
Okay.
Less than 6% of expenses for children with disabilities are publicly funded.
Oh.
6.
Wow. Okay.
Not 16, not 60, just 6.
No, I'll repeat that as well. 6.
And, we live in a society where the dominant narrative, the dominant story is that, all the needs are covered. And so what happens is within our Muslim communities, we also fall into that, right? Like this idea that, no, but they're getting whatever they need.
Right.
But they're not. Like adaptive equipment, assistive technology, therapies like speech and occupational and physio and behavioral, those supports, respite support, where we have caregiver support.
Right.
Psychotherapy, mental health services. Forget that, vision, dental, prescription.
Right.
These are not covered unless you have some supplemental insurance. And even if you do, even if you have the best insurance, you might get 5 sessions covered, 7 sessions covered.
Okay, right.
Right? So what happens is we're working in a space where there's this false conception that children who have critical illness, long-term illness, or disability, they're being supported by this, let's say, community, when that's far, far from the truth.
Okay, so let's do some myth busting here.
Okay.
And we did this as an exercise in the last episode.
Okay.
Let's do it again.
Okay.
It suits a purpose. Sure. And the purpose here is to kind of deconstruct the myth.
Yeah.
So let's unbox this. Okay, let's unbox this. When we say an underserved community, and even in my own professional background, I've been part of many ERGs and employee resource groups, and I've been a co-chair for many DEI initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that can be a whole separate session unto itself. So as an ally, let's just do a little bit of wishful thinking.
Okay.
A little bit of utopian society, wishful thinking here. Let's just say we're all allies, but we just don't know. And I think a lot of it stems from the fact that we don't know until we know.
Yeah.
So this is your platform to educate us, whack us over the head and say, hey, stupid, wake up. This is a reality here.
Yeah.
So do equal parts reality check for us, for the audience, and then do equal parts kind of deconstructing. So just do a deep dive, any angle you want. This is an open field for you. So please go ahead.
So I think the main thing is, like, we need to, within our own community spaces, we need to welcome families.
Okay.
We need to welcome, Smile is specifically focused on children and youth and their families.
Got it.
So family-centered approach, but our focus is on children and youth. And I go into different communities. It's through my Smile work, but also it's just something I love to do. I masjid hop. It's a passion of mine. And I like to experience.
I was going to use another analogy, but it's not suited for that. So masjid hopping, that apparently is a term. Let's coin that term.
I don't know.
Well, it can trend. We can definitely be a hashtag. It could trend on TikTok for sure.
So
hashtag masjid hopping. Okay.
So like I come from a diverse, cultural background, and we love to just go into different centers and to just experience how it is. And so one of the things I always wonder is, I work with over 600 families at Smile.
Okay, mashallah.
Most of those families reside in Ontario, specifically within the GTA.
Wow.
So when I go into these centers, I always wonder, where are the families that we support?
Yes.
Right? And so similar, we were talking before we got on air, and we were talking about the event here. And it was amazing. So many families came out.
Yeah.
And it's a snapshot of the diversity of the community. But the question is, where are those families at madrasa? Where are those families? Where are those children at the Eid events, or at the, in Ramadan, or where are those families? And I have the privilege of working with these families and having conversations with them. The idea at Smile is not for us to create our own space and have everybody come to us. It's to support communities, so that if you're from a Pakistani community, for example, and your family speaks Urdu and you want to belong to a community where people are Urdu speaking, you should be able to do that.
Right.
And this is really, really important, that people should be able to feel safe in the community they're a part of. The problem is, we're not welcoming. We're not inviting.
Right.
And most often I hear, well, we don't have the resources, or we don't know, or I sometimes hear an issue of liability. So let's debunk all three of these, right?
Please. That's the whole intention of this. Why not?
We don't have the resources. Earlier we were chatting just in this room about, well, somehow we have the resources to change the chandelier every few years, but we don't have the resources to make some minor changes. Smile right now, our research and education team, they're engaging in this endeavor where they do audits, environmental audits of spaces. It's not mandatory for somebody to get involved in, and it's not mandatory for a masjid or a community space to ensure that they have fulfilled all suggestions on this audit. All it is, it's an audit of the space, and we provide recommendations and suggestions on how to make the space more inclusive.
And accessible.
Okay. And also how to make what we call fostering a safer space.
All right.
And the way we do that is we use the expertise of our families with lived experience, and also who come from diverse, racial and ethnic backgrounds, and who can say that, the question is, would I feel welcome in this space?
Right.
Would I want my child to be part of this class? Would I feel safe? And so, this is about inviting people, welcoming people.
Thank you.
In regards to the second one, okay, we don't have the expertise. We don't know. We don't know where these kids are. We don't know where to find them. I'd say they're all here.
Yeah.
And when we hold community events and we see hundreds of families come out, it's not that they're not here. They're here. But sometimes we need to put ourselves, as we say, like, lend a hand, or put our foot forward and say, like, welcome into our space.
Right.
And we don't do that. And it's really important for us to do that. But also, this is why organizations exist, right? Like you mentioned, Dean Support Services earlier, Smile Canada. There's organizations that exist for us to be able to bridge gaps, to create connections.
Right.
Right? The families that go to Darul Iman, the families that go to Isna, the families that go to Jaffrey Community Center, the families that go to Darul Tawheed, whatever it is, whatever community you want to be part of, you should be part of.
Couldn't agree more.
Because also our children, and I have children myself, like our children need to be part of, especially in today's day and age, they need to feel safe. The difficulty we face at Smile, and it is heartbreaking that we work with families day in and day out who were rejected from their community. Literally told, sorry, your child can't come to this Islamic school. Your child can't be part of this madrasa. Your child, oh, I'm sorry, your wheelchair is dirtying up our carpet. Like the number of testimonials and the stories that we've heard, you want to say, no, that couldn't have happened. Not in our community.
Right.
That can't be our community.
Yeah.
A community that, like, subhanAllah, has resources.
Right.
Has money,
yeah.
has expertise, has education, has diversity. And this is really where, like, we can't say resource is an issue. We can't say we don't know. I'm here. I honestly, one of the reasons why I come to platforms like this is to say, call us. And not only call us or get to know us, but ask us questions. Be critical of our work. Right? Like, I always felt when I was growing up, I was always passionate about supporting children with disabilities. And there's a story behind there we can get to later. But I went to school. I became an occupational therapist. I was focused in pediatrics. I worked in pediatrics. And I founded Smile over 15 years ago. And as I got, into my clinical work, I realized we're not supporting Muslim families. Right. So then I went ahead and you mentioned it earlier, I did a doctorate in disability studies and health policy. And why? So that I can be able to say, I know some of the statistics. I've engaged in the scholarship, the policy making. Like I'm here to say, like, we're here to help you.
Right.
And we work with this awesome, amazing, talented group of individuals with lived experiences who are part of different communities, who are here to help.
Right.
And we won't charge you for it. Right? Like, that's the thing at Smile. Like, alhamdulillah, like, we're not going to charge you for it.
Right.
Just sit down and have a conversation with us. Just quickly, that third myth is about liability. And this is one that...
Do tell.
So I'm not a lawyer, but I do have some in my family. So my sister and my brother-in-law.
See how you kind of very, very gently and very subtly kind of back that up. And you're like, I do have some.
I do have some.
Yeah. The attorney general. Don't be shy about it. Might as well, since you've already kind of opened the door, might as well start name dropping. But all right.
So the thing is, the liability issue, like, subhanAllah, like, we're pulling at straws here, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I hear from and not to pinpoint anyone. It's not one individual. It's not one organization, nor is it one Islamic school or Islamic center. But sometimes in conversation you hear, but what if we don't have the resources? And what if something happens?
Right.
What if a child has a seizure?
Right.
What if somebody is aggressive? What if somebody falls? And I always wonder, what if I was aggressive? What if you fell? What like, subhanAllah, as Muslims, we know anything can happen at any time to anybody.
Sure.
So why are we focusing on a population and saying, oh, no, but we can't take that responsibility? Right. It's, as Muslims, and I carefully chose this word, underserved, not undeserved. Underserved, why?
Right.
Because it's our responsibility as Muslims to serve. Oftentimes, different organizations have that as part of their slogan. We are here to serve in service of humanity.
Right.
By Allah, we are here to serve. So why is it that we are sort of backtracking and, like, pulling that away?
Yeah.
When it comes to some families.
Right.
Right. In the name of liability, like, it doesn't honestly make any sense. In my opinion, and this is my opinion, I think we use it as an excuse.
I would agree. I would agree.
So-
And I have several also kind of lived experiences being here within the shura of Masjid Darul-Aman and also on the board. But we can get into that at a later time or during this session
Sure.
as well. But I'd rather allow the talk time to be focused on you, Sukaina. So tell us more. Is there like a fourth myth that we need to deconstruct or bust? Or let's do a deep dive. How, and let's cut to the chase. Okay, because we do have questions as well that I want producer Kashyap to get to. It's one thing to be critical of Smile Canada,
Sure.
okay, but it's another to be critical of us and see how I've started this trend where I like not only I don't point at myself because there's still 3 fingers pointing the other way. I put both hands on myself and say, yes, I'm holding myself fully accountable. I'm holding myself fully accountable. So and I'm using the collective we, what can we as masjids, as Islamic centers, as madrasas, maktabs, call it what you will, as faith-based organizations serving the GTA Muslim population, what can we do? How can we do better? And how can we address these issues? And then I'll give you some the other side of the coin, yes, in terms of addressing everything that you've said, because it does resonate and it is real. And I'll let you know my experiences on that side then. So please.
So I think the first thing is we have to know the myths, right? If we are assuming that everything is going well for people, then we might not have it in us to say, okay, we need to reach out. So I'm here to tell you, I wrote a dissertation on it. It's not going well. Right? It's not going well. The expenses for a child and their family, a child with a disability or critical illness, and their family is exponentially higher.
Right.
Right? So that's the first thing for us to know. That why is it that we have to supplement, for somebody for their respite? I'll give you an example that many people might resonate with, because oftentimes, especially if you have young children, sometimes, due to various reasons, a child ends up in a hospital for a night or two. They might experience some illness. We're here in Toronto at the hospital for sick children that many people are familiar with.
Sick Kids Hospital.
Yep, Sick Kids Hospital. Subsidized parking per day is $10. Subsidized. Okay, so that's your discounted rate. And we meet families. We have a program. It's called our Hospital Support Program, where we have families who are part of the program. Their kids are there for weeks, for months.
Right.
So why? So then, okay, take public transport. But these families, because Sick Kids is renowned, and it really is, families are coming from Mississauga, they're coming from different places, they're coming from Durham, they're coming from different spaces. They have children at home. So this program that we have, it supports, that cost of that additional parking expense.
Okay.
So why? Because at $10 a day, and your child is there for 60 days. Right. And during those 60 days, because you're there for your child, and I've been there for my child, you're lonely, you're isolated, especially within this sort of like COVID, post-COVID context we're in. You might have children at home, and you also need to continue making money for your family.
For sure.
And in this we're in difficult financial times. Food is more expensive, gas is more expensive. So what do we do? Right. And so the first thing I think we need to say is, let's debunk this myth that everybody's okay. At Smile, we work with many newcomers, many refugees. And this is where my research is focused on: displacement and disablement, the intersection between people with disabilities who are also refugees. Okay. Right? Okay. And their experiences. Right. And one of the myths is that, well, like, alhamdulillah, Canada is bringing over refugees. Yes. Enough? I don't think so. But what we often do is we compare ourselves to south of the border. Then we say, oh, we're doing a fantastic job, right? True. Okay. Very true. So with that being said, what happens when a family comes? They get some support for acute medicine, right? Vaccinations, simple checkups, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
They get support with finding housing.
Okay.
They get support maybe with, through settlement agencies like initial employment.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a few other items.
All right.
Okay. So where do children we serve fall?
Right.
Can I share a story?
Please.
Okay.
Please, by all means.
This might give some perspective.
By all means, yes.
We met a family from Sudan.
Okay.
Last year, and this family was being supported by one of the settlement agencies.
Mm.
And Smile Canada was notified, and we were called to come and visit this family.
Mm-hmm.
We went, and the family was put up in a hotel.
Okay.
As many of you know, when many refugees come, they're often put up in these hotels.
Mm.
We met somebody from within the community, a leader,
Mm-hmm.
who said to us, well, aren't they lucky? Aren't they lucky to
And-
live in a hotel for months? So let me explain what the situation was.
Right.
A family of 7 in a single hotel room with the double queen bed situation.
Sure,
like
2
very,
beds.
Very standard,
Just
right?
2 beds, yeah.
A single bathroom.
Yeah.
A family of 7, of which one of them we noticed right away has cerebral palsy. In this condition, the child did not have the mobility to move independently, to sit up independently, to communicate verbally,
Mm-hmm.
or to support his upper extremities. Okay, so think of like, upper back, shoulders, and arms.
Right.
They had no wheelchair.
No wheelchair.
They had no assessment. They had no connections with rehabilitation services, because the way the system works is you cannot get rehabilitation services unless you have a family doctor. You don't get a family doctor unless you have a permanent place of residence.
Right.
They were moved hours away from the GTA.
Mm.
So during the months that they were there, they couldn't apply for funding. Alhamdulillah, we were able to support.
Right.
But that support is limited.
Yeah.
What we need is people to know that that's not an outlier. That's not a situation that doesn't exist.
Right.
At Smile, we have majority of families now that are being connected with us are people from Afghanistan, families from Sudan, families from different parts of the world, where many people are moving to Canada for to literally, as the name suggests, seek refuge.
Yes.
And what are we doing? What do they need? They need their people. And I don't say that like in a shy way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things we learned from this whole like DEI initiative is that I deserve to be able to interact with members of my community.
Sure.
Who speak my language, who dress like me. We're not a melting pot where we all have to join together. Gone is that sort of.
Sukaina, I've said many a time on this podcast with different guests that representation matters.
It matters.
Representation 100% matters. Whether you're a hijabi police officer, or like we said, the DA's office, you're wearing, you have a nice beard, whatever the case is, representation matters.
So here's the thing, right? We have to know, first of all, that these families, to a great extent, and I'm not saying all of them, right? Not everybody who has a child with a disability needs financial support. No. Not everybody who has a child with a disability needs to be part of an organization. No, it's your choice.
Right.
But what I want to say from the work that I do is the number of families who need our support is so high, but the community support is limited.
Yeah.
And so how can we bridge that? And the first thing is to actually say, we need to know that people need our support. We as an organization need support. I cannot tell you how many conversations with community leaders I've had where the response is along the lines of, Beta, you're doing a good job, but, like we don't have the ability or like this isn't really something that we need to get involved with.
Yeah, I call that straight out BS.
And I even have heard, and I can't believe I'm saying this on air.
No, go ahead.
But I've even heard these children will get Jannah. Inshallah. And I don't doubt that for a second.
No one would doubt that.
I don't doubt that for a second.
But that's not the issue, is it?
Right? And I had no intention to do this, but I'll say something. I lost a little girl. Okay? I don't doubt for a second she gets Jannah. But you know who needs the support? The mom and the dad and the brothers and the sisters and the child. That child deserves to be part of a community.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about whether or not they need you in the afterlife.
Yeah.
It's about what you're doing for them now.
So, Sukaina, I'm going to now use this platform to call out every masjid. Why not? We can. Okay, it's that type of platform. And I see producer Kashif already here teeing up something. I think he's teeing up. Oh, he's just working behind the scenes. He's just working behind the scenes. That's fine. So he does what he does, and he does it incredibly well. But for the masjid, there is actually a working group of Ontario masjids, or more known as GTA masjids. It's about 13, 14 masjids. You guys, I would assume, and I know the running joke that if you assume you're making an ass out of you and me, but I'll let that be for now. Okay. Because I'm going to assume that you guys are zakat eligible. Would that be correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So let's just go with that and say, so please explain.
So, I mean, yeah. So I'll just explain sort of what SMILE stands is, because I cannot speak for anybody else, and I'm not a scholar in any regard. But SMILE is a zakat eligible organization.
Okay.
We've sought opinions from several scholars, including a group that many people listening might know, which is the Canadian Council of Imams.
Yes.
But we do take a more conservative approach than maybe another organization. I don't know. I won't speak for them. And that is that as an organization, we segregate zakat funds. Okay. And so when somebody donates their zakat to SMILE,
yes,
it doesn't just go to SMILE's initiatives. It goes specifically to selected programs that are for families who are in financial need, who demonstrate financial need.
Good.
And we have a long process about what that is. There is an application process. And the reason why is because, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, not all families, we also cannot assume that all families who have children with critical illness or disabilities require our financial support. So we have one program that's actually amongst our families, probably one of the most popular. We call it scholarships, but it's not based on merit. It's just got a nice ring to it. We call it financial assisted scholarships. And that money is a zakat eligible program.
Okay.
And so what happens is if you apply to if a family applies to that program, they have to then show through, of course, certain papers and financial information, so to speak, how their expenses, sort of like and this is where that algorithm comes in, how they're in financial need. But one of the things that's very interesting, and we've spoken to scholars about this, we've spoken to members of our community about this, is when we typically think zakah, and we typically think of essential services, what comes to mind? Sorry, I'm flipping this on.
No, please. I mean, you can ask me questions. Yeah, 100%. You can be the host.
What comes to mind when you think a zakat eligible?
So essential services for me would be like food, shelter,
100%.
Security, safety.
Okay. The only thing we challenge people on is I mentioned earlier about essential services related to a child's disability.
Right.
That if your child cannot communicate verbally, is a communication device that would allow them to or support them in their communication considered an essential service. If you don't have the mobility to walk independently, is your wheelchair considered an essential service?
Right.
Right.
Going back to that child,
the
family was originally from Sudan that was put up in the hotel.
100%. Now,
cerebral palsy.
Any imam, any scholar, any learned person that I've personally spoken to has never said no. Right. It's just that sometimes what happens is we don't think of these services as critical.
Yeah.
We don't even think of prescription medication as one of the things that that fall under critical, but it can save lives.
For sure. For sure.
Right? And so what happens is it is important for us to know that there are services that exist. There are essential criteria that is there that maybe is a little bit of out of the box thinking. At Smile, we reserve Zakat funding to only selected programs that go to what we call direct family support.
Okay.
So no administrative, no salaries, no.
That's good.
Nothing like
That's
that.
Good.
But it is important because those funds we need support in those areas.
Yeah. And look, my intention here is to raise awareness to all the masajids throughout the GTA, that whether you're on the shura, whether you're on the board, or whether you're just a simple congregant, masjid going person, support these types of services initiatives because it matters.
It does. And you mentioned accommodations earlier. And you mentioned that they're not as expensive as I think people assume.
A simple thing, right? Like, does your masjid have a ramp? You know, is your wudu area and bathroom wheelchair accessible, right?
And there's an organization. This is not a plug, but there's an organization called Stopgap. Like STOPGAP, Stopgap.
Sure. Okay.
There's a masjid in Mississauga, Darul Tawheed, or often known as TCC, Tawheed Community Center.
Yeah.
And they have it's almost like a 2-foot step. And so they purchased a ramp from Stopgap. And Stopgap is a very, very inexpensive solution that literally stops the gap.
Oh.
The founder, Luke Anderson, he shared his story. He actually came to presented at a Smile Gala once, and he shared his story about how every day he used to go to work, and there were 2 steps that prevented him from entering. 2 steps.
Okay.
That's it. Just 2 steps.
Right.
And he founded Stopgap.
Amazing.
And so when people say, well, we're going to have to reconstruct and we're going to have to do all these things, not always. I'm not saying not ever.
Right.
But not always.
Okay.
When we do audits of centers and we provide suggestions, a lot of our suggestions are around visual supports, auditory supports, ways to make your spaces a little bit more accessible to children, but also children friendly. A lot of our spaces are not even child friendly.
Right.
So how to do that, right? A lot of our spaces have these what we call children's rooms. And I say children's rooms because it's just a noise-proof room where it has no supports for children, no books, no activities, no self-regulation, sensory supports in there. Something as simple, and I'm not trying to downplay anything, but little things, right? You have a child who might have noise sensitivity.
Okay. Do tell.
So when the adhan goes off, the child covers their ears.
Yes.
Noise canceling headphones.
Yes.
Purchased on Amazon.
Right.
$15. Right? Smile has a program, and I'm offering this program to whoever is listening.
Please.
We have a program where we provide these toolkits to spaces. It's free of charge.
Okay.
Initially, this program was supported by TD Canada, and all you have to do in return is attend the presentation and replace items that might be taken, not stolen, but taken because people need them. So our philosophy is if we provide this series of tools and a family requires it at home, give it. Sure. Wholeheartedly. Bismillah. Just give it. Don't hold back.
Okay.
Right? But make an intention to replace it. So we'll be the starters. Like we'll sort of initiate, and we'll provide the toolkit. What does it do? It just helps foster safer spaces. Like that's what we're talking about, that our spaces, we need to be inclusive and we're not.
Yeah.
And so how do we become inclusive?
Right.
So in terms of the deep dive, it's like, 1, we need to know that families need our support. And 2, we need to do something about it.
Well, exactly. 100%. We need to be proactive not reactive. We need to be constructive, not theoretical or philosophical about it. Saying, one of the biggest criticisms I have of any masjid organization, and I'll speak of my own first, is that there is a notion that we need to have full ownership of something. Well, okay, full ownership is one thing, but that to me is not a partnership. A partnership with the likes of a Smile Canada or Dean Support Services would at least allow the experts to come in and be like, that audit you were mentioning, hey, here are some small changes you can make to make your masjid, your Islamic center more accommodating, more accessible, and it's just a shift in mindset, I find.
And we live in a country where we do have a human rights code, right?
Well
and
said. Well said.
I don't like to, we're not threatening by any measure.
You do have a few family members who are lawyers.
But they're going to hate that I said that. But we have a human rights code that says we cannot discriminate on the 100%. Basis of race, on the basis of disability.
Exactly. Well said.
And we live in the country, right? So, it is important for us to know that we have laws that govern us, that tell us, and that are good laws.
Yes.
Right? That tell us that you have to show that you cannot accommodate. Well, the running joke is, if you're replacing the chandelier, you can probably afford the ramp.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Let's stop saying we can't do it, right? And this is something, I've been doing this for over 15 years, like I mentioned, and it's something that I still have difficulty swallowing.
Yeah. So let's, Sukaina, get to some questions.
Yes.
Because I will want us to address some questions as well.
Sure.
We've already had some questions from producer Kashif that are coming through Instagram. So go ahead, producer Kashif.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. I actually think most of them have already been addressed. So inshallah, let me just pull them up here. So the first question that came in was, what process scholarly oversight exists to make sure zakat eligibility, huge responsibility handling zakat. Yeah. So I'll just summarize it as it seems to me that Smile Canada, they do segregate their funds between zakat and between what's not zakat, and they have scholarly opinions. But obviously we're not all scholars, so I would address anyone to check with their scholars, make sure they're comfortable with, because different organizations will have different zakat policies and processes. Right. So the next question I think we've already answered also is the proper response to Muslim organizations that claim they can't afford accommodations. Yep. So
and can I just add to that?
Yeah, please.
That we're here to help. And I know I've said this before, but we're here to help. All right? Contact us. Email us, go to our website, reach out. We're not saying that organizations should figure it out on their own.
Right.
We're saying we're here to help and connect them to, there is some funding support available. There are some resources available. Right. And I'm talking about government, public resources. There are organizations, for example, that are available that would support children with autism or how to make spaces more inclusive, to support children with different disabilities, different needs that they might have. We're here to support you in becoming more inclusive.
Absolutely. And I'll say again, on behalf of Smile Canada, it's a simple thing to do. Just to have that mindset, and again, to be proactive, because as a masjid, whether it's in your mission statement or your vision statement, like we were discussing off air, you need to accommodate the larger community. And just because you don't see a segment of the population at your masjid, at your mosque, doesn't mean they don't exist. I'll be very blunt about it. I'll be very blunt about it. And for me, it was, I'll use the term an eye-opener, and I mean that with the best of intentions, because for me, when we had the Smile Canada event, this time last year at Masjid Darul Iman, alhamdulillah, it was a beautiful sight. But it was also, to me, a little bit heart-wrenching, because to me, it was like, where are these families on a daily basis?
Yeah.
Where are these families on a weekly basis? Where are these families during Eid and Ramadan, like we were discussing off air, right? So as a masjid organization, whether you're a congregant, whether you're a financial donor, whether you're on the board, whatever, just, I'll say it and call it out for what it is. Treat this as a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Children with disabilities within the Muslim community exist of all shapes, sizes, backgrounds.
Yeah.
So we as a masjid need to do better. And I'm calling everyone out on this. Again, don't let whether you came here, my parents came here in the 60s, whether you came here in the 70s, 80s, 90s, I don't care where you came from. I don't care what age you are. I don't care what mentality or mindset you have that is kind of maybe a blocker to you taking on this challenge and saying, we need to do better. We need to do better, because to me, it's a loud wake-up call.
Yeah.
And I encourage everyone to check out the Smile Canada website, go to these events and functions and see that these people exist.
Yeah.
It's one thing to have someone in your family with a disability. Yeah. In absence of that, go to these events and see that again, I don't want anyone to say, oh, out of sight, out of mind. That is the worst thing you can do.
It is. And also it's our responsibility. Like, it's our responsibility as a Muslim. It's our responsibility as a human.
Yeah.
It's our responsibility to do our part in reaching out and to do our part in including. And again, we're focused on children, including children. It's ironic that we're not so children friendly because we know what Islam says. We know how the Prophet, peace be upon him, treated children. We all know it, right? Like, the stories are told to us over and over again. But for some reason, we want everything quiet and perfect. We want nobody to touch anything. We get really upset easily, and we forget the beauty in having innocent children and what children teach us as adults. And
100%.
we also want everything, we want everything to be perfect, and we want to not be able to have to accommodate. And I find it so ironic because just that goes against fundamental Islamic principles.
Couldn't agree more. Sukaina. I mean, look, at the end of the day, whatever hadith you want to choose, whatever ayah of the Quran you want to choose, whatever aspect of Islam you want to choose, the fundamental tenet is that we all belong.
We
all belong. And yes, even children with disabilities, parents who are looking after those children with disabilities, people with disabilities in general. Okay. They have a right to be at a masjid. Like you said, whether it's, fixing the gap to allow a wheelchair access into the mosque, allowing a room with some form of a visual stimulation, or maybe not to have that auditory kind of overload. Here at Juma Salah, I've seen a child with those noise canceling headphones.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself at first, I had to be like, okay, then I understood.
And you know what? It's more about an inclusive mindset than anything.
That's it.
Right? So we don't need to say, okay, every masjid has to have this. What we need to do is say, as a masjid, as a community center, or as a community, let's just reach out and ask people, what do they need?
Yeah.
Right? Let's just reach out. And we can be, a connecting piece for the families we serve from the various the communities that people come from, and we can support. But what do we do at Smile? We say, ask them.
Yeah.
Ask them, what do they need?
Right.
Do you know, oftentimes the response is, and I find this so heartbreaking, as I do have children of my own, but when we ask parents what do they want for their children, the number one response is a friend. One.
Okay.
One friend.
Right.
I just want him to have one friend.
Yeah.
I just want her to have one friend.
Right.
Right. We grew up in communities. I remember I grew up in Kitchener-Waterloo, in community where, you come in a small masjid community, those are your friends.
Yeah.
Right. And so when families say we want to be invited to one party, I want my child to be invited to one gathering.
Yeah.
We have gatherings all the time. Or I want my child to be part of one sports team. In all of our masjid communities, we have these little leagues and, these like Muslim leagues and stuff. We need to, on all fronts, ask the question, how do we reach out? And the simple answer is, and not to belittle, like any kind of systemic issue or funding issue. I'm not trying to pretend like there's no barriers that exist. But start by asking, what do you need?
Yeah.
And we can do that. We all have, the ability to do that, to be able to go up to a parent, to go up to an organization and to say, what can I do?
Yeah. And I think far too often, and yes, I'm, giving you an exclusive peek behind the curtain. I think far too often, whether you're in the corporate world or within the masjid world, management world, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, not enough people want to wrest away that control onto someone else. It's easier for someone to say, I know what we should do, and this is what we're going to do. It should be turned on its head, and it should be like, oh, the people that we're serving, like you were saying earlier, the people that we're serving, they know what's happening. We should ask them, and then we should put together an action plan.
100%. And we have to ask. And at the end of the day, the irony is we're doing this for the sake of Allah, right? Like we have our
100%.
Boards,
100%.
our centers, our schools, our Quran classes, everything we're doing, inshallah, we're doing for the right reasons. So how can we say then we won't ask people what they need?
Yeah.
And this is where, the individuals who work at Smile, who support Smile, none of us are scholars, right? Like I said, none of us are scholars. But one of the things we do know from what we've been taught in our faith is we do need to support those who are underserved, right? Like we do need to serve those who are not getting the support that they need.
For sure.
But that we know our deen teaches us, right? So inshallah, honestly, like moving forward, we need to just reach out. We need to work together. I'm a firm believer that our communities and our organizations, and one of the beauties about Smile is the diversity of the families we support. And it is such a cool thing to see. Like really, it's such a cool thing to see. And to be able to say that, like, look, we're the quote, the Toronto City quote is, diversity is our strength.
Yes.
You go into City Hall, it's like plastered all over the wall and all the pamphlets and stuff. And it's a great quote, but we have to actually believe in it, right? Like we have to actually say, like, diversity in what way?
Right.
Diversity in our racial and ethnic backgrounds and our cultures and our abilities.
Yes.
Right? We're looking at people as people. We're looking at them as Muslims, and we're saying that as much as I can learn from you, you can learn from me. As much as a child might be learning from me, I can be humbled by that child.
Agreed.
And what better outcome could I get at a masjid from being humbled by a child? Like, I think we need to dig deep and see what's the issue. Why aren't we doing it?
Yeah. It's this has been a phenomenal episode.
Thank you.
Because it's really pulled at the heartstrings, I hope. Inshallah. And it's inshallah going to be quite the eye opener for a lot of people. Inshallah. So A, when are we going to have Smile Canada back here at Masjid Darliman? And B, let's definitely talk about that office, that satellite office or that hub or whatever.
Are you still recording?
The East End. Yeah, we're still live. 100% we're still live. Yeah. We haven't cut the broadcast.
Okay.
And you said you'd say it, so I'm actually putting you on the spot and saying it for you.
Amazing.
So when can we have that satellite office?
Inshallah.
Clearly here at Masjid Darliman, we have plenty of space still.
Inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. So again, because this is one thing that, as a masjid, we need to be responsible for. And it's in the word responsibility. It's a response to your ability. right? It's a response to your ability. And that means abilities of all shapes, sizes, and whatnot, including disabilities, right? So I'm putting everybody on notice, including myself. Okay. So,
sounds good.
Yeah, 100%. Anything to close off the session?
I'll just add one thing. I had the opportunity to volunteer at a Smile Canada event, took their family and stuff.
Okay.
So before we even talk about accommodations and where we need to spend the money, the thing I found most valuable about it was before we volunteered, there was sort of an hour meeting where they sort of trained you on some of the things. And that was really eye-opening on how to sort of the empathy to show how to treat people, the type of things you might see. So before we even talk about like making physical changes, maybe everyone that's involved in organizations that are serving the public, maybe there's an opportunity. I would recommend just that training. Like it was subhanAllah amazing. I send a lot of people to volunteer at Smile Canada now, like my younger cousins and stuff, just because I want them to go through that hour training that they do. SubhanAllah, it was very eye-opening.
And it's available to whoever wants it. And like I said, we don't want finances to be an issue. We don't want anyone to tell us, oh, we can't afford it. Okay. Yeah. That's okay.
Okay. Well, right? Then again, sign us up.
We just want to be able to share that there shouldn't be hesitancy. There shouldn't be fear in working with people. They're people. They're kids, right? We should just, maybe, there's some supports we can provide in working with, for example, children who are nonverbal, right? So some people might get hesitant, like, what do I say? Or like, what do I do? Or if somebody has a communication device, like, am I allowed to, like, what am I allowed to do or not allowed to do? And I know the event that you were talking about, we were actually there together. And I was saying earlier before the podcast, before you came in, that single event is a snapshot of the diversity that exists. Right. There was a young man who came to the cotton candy machine, and on his communication device that he had over his neck,
right,
he typed in, "I want cotton candy." Yeah. And there was a voice that said, "I want cotton candy."
Yeah.
And the Smile team, I think as a joke, put me behind the cotton candy stand. And it was so, like, I did such a terrible job. It was, it didn't even look nice. It was just kind of like out there. And I said to him, "I'm so sorry," right? Like, this is like the worst cotton candy you're ever going to get. And he looks up and he just like, smiles and he goes, "Thank you. It's beautiful." And it totally wasn't, right? But that's a snapshot of just how we can interact and have fun and share and, be loving and being inclusive just by being ourselves, right? Like just by inviting people.
Yes.
And it was so beautiful at this particular event. And same thing with the event that you were mentioning earlier. And this is why we invite communities to join with Smile Canada, and we host events together. But the key is we host it in your space so that members of your community, not my community, I mean, essentially, we're all part of the same community. But what I mean is members of this particular geographical, maybe cultural community are coming.
Right.
Right. And then members of another community are coming together.
Right.
Inshallah, these people will grow up and we can serve them and they can be part of, like really part of the community then.
Beautiful.
That's honestly what we want to leave with today.
And just quickly, we got the contact information on screen also. So
yes,
the website is smilecan.org, info@smilecan.org. And then you can also follow their Instagram, a lot of great contents and updates if you're interested in volunteering, all the events that are happening. So it's a great resource also.
And if I can, very, very briefly, there's a campaign that's happening right now.
Okay, do tell.
Like, as we speak, it's called Move for Smile.
Mm-hmm.
And Move for Smile is exactly what it is. It's a campaign about how we can all do something, an activity. We can go for walks, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's going for a walk with a wheelchair, a walker, but we can explore the outdoors. We can, cook, we can do crafts, we can do all sorts of things. And so the Move for Smile campaign is designed for all of us to really be involved and be active. And what we have is we have various individuals doing campaigns. And we're asking the community to support those campaigns. Some of the Smile staff have campaigns. Some of the Smile volunteers, Smile families have campaigns. And it's a way for us to raise awareness, but also the funds from this particular campaign are all going to our wellness program.
Okay.
Especially with our newcomer families, there is a need for culturally responsive mental health supports that are catered to children with disabilities and their families.
Okay.
So, for example, children who have experienced severe trauma, but who might need support in communicating what that trauma is.
Okay.
Right? So it is important for us to find the experts and to pay for the services and to ensure that families are getting them.
Okay.
So that's what this campaign is for. And if anyone has any questions about it or where the money goes, I'm always happy to just get in touch, inshallah.
Yeah. And
sorry.
Put up the, sorry.
Oh, sorry. What did you want me to put up?
No, just Smile Canada's contact info.
Oh, yep. So I can put that up. There it is again.
There you go. Awesome.
And then we had one final question. It might be a good one
Yeah,
to end on also.
Yeah, please.
So let me display it here. So the question was saying, oh, sorry, where'd it go? Okay, I might not have copied it over, so I'll just have to read it out.
Verbally say it, yeah.
Yep. So the question was saying, what was, and I don't remember exactly, so I'm just going to paraphrase it.
Sure.
What was the most heartwarming or impactful moment you've had doing your work for serving the community?
Oh, great question.
It's a great question. I mean, it's hard to answer because there's been so many. But I would say one moment that has really, really stuck out is we had a program called, initially, it was called Launch 6 with 6 individuals under the support of a Smile friend and therapist, Nessa Hassanpour. And it's now turned into a program called Open Shop. And these are individuals, youth with disabilities who have created, they're all entrepreneurs.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they, just watching, there's a great video on it that maybe we can share, inshallah, I can send it to you. But they have launched, each of them have launched businesses.
Okay.
With the support of some respite workers, some therapists, some individuals. But these businesses now, mashallah, are thriving. And it's just such a beautiful thing to see. We live in a society that's very ableist. We look at somebody and we say, no, you can't work for this company, or you can't have this job. Because, for example, maybe somebody has a stutter, or maybe somebody doesn't communicate the way that we would want them to.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
Yeah, implicit and explicit biases are real.
So we're just like, nope, you can't do this.
Yeah.
Watching these young people do things that you and I could, I mean, I shouldn't speak for you, but I definitely can't do, right? Watching them excel, watching them grow, and watching the community's response is phenomenal, right? And it just goes to show, and it's just such a beautiful thing to see. But it's also one of those moments when their work is showcased, and people come by to the booths and is like, "You did this? Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
why not?
Absolutely."
And for me, seeing the pride and the responses from those youth. Yeah, I did this, right?
Nice.
We have one youth, he makes Abu Bakr, he makes spices and these like different like South Asian spices and mixes and hot sauce, and I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Right. Asher, he paints, and he's an artist, and he makes bookmarks and paintings, and I don't do that. Sunni, his name is Yassine.
Mm-hmm.
He created an app.
Wow.
Like an app, like on your phone.
Yeah.
Forget, I don't know how to do that. I don't even know how one would. I can't even use the apps that I have.
Yeah, most
let
of us
alone
wouldn't be able to do any of this. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, we're not giving people enough credit. We're not even allowing them to share their talents. Forget that. This whole conversation's about we don't even let them enter our masjid, right? Like,
yeah, back to
let alone work for us and design and create and speak and share. And so we have a long way to go. But this particular initiative, this particular program has been something for me that I'm personally very proud of the Smile youth and their families and the Smile team. But it's also like I get all these moments where I get to sit back and be like, yeah, take a look at what they just did and take it in. Masha. And support them.
Yeah.
And people have that moment where they're like, you did this? And they're like, yeah, I did this.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes we need that nudge to say, yeah, okay.
Yeah, look, it's showcasing talent and it's showcasing ability, different abilities.
Different abilities. And honestly,
100%.
we all have talents. We have ideas. We have at Smile we talk about ways to learn and ways to move and ways to communicate. And we might not all communicate or move or learn in the same way.
Yes.
But we all have ways, and actually that beauty is something that comes from Allah.
And completely. There is beauty in neurodiversity. There is beauty in ability of all, shapes and sizes and talents. So Sukaina, I'll give you the honor and privilege of
sorry, just one more thing before we close down.
Oh, sure.
So masha leaders get a bad rap, especially on.
Dude, I'll give them a bad rap too, man. Don't worry about it. What's going on?
But the flip side of that, like you've been doing this for 15 years. We just want to give out a shout out to organizations that are progressing in the right direction. If you could just name a few, not only to give them some, mashallah, encourage their work, but also like other organizations might be able to leverage their learnings. It's different when you're reaching out to someone that's doing the same work as you, right? Versus someone else telling you what to do. So maybe there's opportunities for them to learn.
There you go. So Sukaina, the voice of reason. Okay.
So I'm gonna give you sort of two sets of examples with these organizations that are really coming up, and I'm gonna name drop a few. If that's okay.
Please.
That's the point.
We work together very closely with these organizations. So, for example, I know recently you had Sukaina on. Smile and Sukaina have worked together to provide an accessible home for women and children.
Good.
Right.
Good.
And the way that we work together is like, when I say work together, I mean really we work together. And so we did an audit of a home, and we also because we talked about financial barriers and that financial pressure on some of our families. We have many families currently who are living in shelters, right? These are Muslim families who are looking for a safe space.
Right.
These are also children with disabilities.
Yeah.
Right. So working together with Sukaina has been such a, and when I say working, I mean we are currently working. So we refer families who have children with disabilities into these spaces that we know is not only designed to protect women and children, but is a space that is inclusive and accessible and safer for children with disabilities.
Yes.
So that's working with organizations like Nissa Homes, working with organizations, like I can name so many, but like working together so that we can support families who are going through multiple challenges.
Yeah.
We also have been working with a lot of community centers.
Okay, good.
For example, I mentioned earlier, TCC, Dar al Tawheed, ISNA, as many of you know, Gibraltar, I always want to say triple IT or IIT. IIT. We did an event here in this very space that we're sitting at. We recently had 3 Eid events, one in Scarborough, one at the Jaffrey Islamic Center. They have an organization called Jaffrey Support Services. And then some of the organizations that are in Mississauga. So I don't want anyone to feel listening to this that nobody's doing anything. That's not true.
Yep.
It's not true by any measure. It's not true. It's just that we feel like we have to continue these conversations and challenge ourselves a bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's where I'm going to say, if we haven't worked together, please reach out. And if we have worked together, let's keep going. Let's do more so that these events and these programs continue to support families that we serve, as well as families who we might not even know. There might be families in your community we don't know, and we can work together to support those families to the best of both of our abilities with whatever resources we have. And one of the things we learn at Smile is when organizations come together in their expertise, with their resources, with their backgrounds, with their lived experiences, there's only good that can come from that. Right? Because we're putting our efforts together. Inshallah, there's only good that can come from that. So I do want to leave on a note that it's not that we're not doing anything as communities, but that we need to be doing more.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was the pretense as to how we started this session, that we need to challenge ourselves to do better.
Yeah.
We 100% need to do better.
Yeah. And thank you, Brother Kasha, for bringing that up, because I just, it's important for us to always move forward and know that there's work to be done. But that's why we go back to that idea of serving, right? We're serving a community. We're serving communities. And by doing that, inshallah, it's going to be good for the people that we support and for us as individuals. And inshallah, we're all doing it for the right reasons, and we can only move forward. But working within our community also means working to support those people who we might not see at the masjid.
Yes. That's it.
Or in our Islamic schools, or in our Quran classes.
Yes.
And I can tell you, just from the privilege that I have as executive director at Smile, that families come to me every day looking for a Quran class or an Islamic school or a center that wants their children, wholeheartedly wants their children, as opposed to rejecting their child.
Yeah. Okay.
So I guess, a note to leave off on.
Yeah, it is. And look, I say this with a heavy heart. Look, again, I'm just going to repeat. We need to do better. We need to challenge ourselves to, remove any kind of blocker. Financial is not an issue. In fact, here at Masjid Darul-Iman, we've had access to accessibility grants from the government. It's just simply how we apply them. We've had access to security grants. You see the steel fence and other physical security improvements that have been offered and sponsored by the government. So funding is not an issue. I'll debunk that myself.
Yeah.
But I guess it's simply just a matter of mindset, and simply a matter of working towards a common cause, and that is just making the masjid more of an accessible space.
Yeah.
I'll say it plain and simple. So on this note, we'll close down this session. Sukaina, thank you so very much for coming and educating us on Smile Canada and what Smile Canada does for the community, what Smile Canada can do for every masjid. And so again, I'll say to every masajid out there, contact them for their free audit. It is free.
Yeah. Free.
And make those minor changes to provide more accessibility into the masjid. And as you heard, there are many services. There are many parents that are looking for Quran classes, that are looking for madrasa, maktab, Sunday school, whatever the case is, and a space for their child.
And if you make those small changes, I am promising you on air that you will notice those changes are going to support more than what you intended. I'll give you a quick example.
Sure.
If you put in a ramp with the intention that I'm putting in this ramp, there's a brother in a wheelchair, and I'm putting in this ramp. That ramp will support the mother who has a stroller. That ramp will support the young man who injured his knee playing football. That ramp will support the sister who is going through a lot, who's having a hard day. And instead of taking the stairs, she deserves to take that ramp. So I am promising you that you make those small changes with a good intention, that what will come out of these small changes is more than what you could ever imagine.
Well said. I after this, I can't say anything more. I'm just going to close it here.
Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Sukaina, for coming and being part of the show. You're welcome back anytime. And I've said this to many guests because we want to continue the dialogue.
Inshallah.
It's not just a one and done type show. So please come back. And we'll leave it at this. So just make sure to tune in and tune in often. The purpose of this broadcast is to focus on happy, strong families, and the foundation of that is definitely a whole bunch of things, whether it's representation, accessibility, just a change in mindset, just being more open to diversity, and all of that are the good stuff. It all helps with the core of being a good person. So come back to this webcast. It's aired live every Sunday at 11 Eastern. You can find us on so many different channels, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or Instagram and any of all that.